Okay, so we are going to have a look at the Mangala Sutta. So I hope you approve. If you don't approve, it's too late. It's going to happen anyway. No choice in the matter. So, but it is a very, in my opinion, very important suttas in the Theravada tradition. There's often talk about what they call the three. What do they call it again? Three kind of, important suttas that we often talk about in Buddhism. That is the Mahamangala Sutta, the Ratana Sutta, and the Metta Sutta. And all of those suttas are found pretty much in the same place. They're found in the Sutta Nipata, which is part of the Khuddaka Nikaya, which is supposed to be the short collection. And so all of those three suttas are there, which is kind of interesting. Three of those significant suttas are found in the short collection of the Sutta Nipata, which is not kind of core, to normally the core part of Buddhism is considered the four main Nikayas, the long discourses, the middle discourses, the connected discourses, and the numerical discourses. So there's a little bit on the side. But there are lots of very interesting suttas in the Sutta Nipata. That's where you find things like the Atthakavagga, the chapter of eights. You find the Parayanavagga, the chapter of going beyond. And these are all very profound and beautiful suttas that are also referred to elsewhere in the Pali canon. And so they have a very kind of ancient pedigree, if you like, an ancient claim to authenticity, which is interesting. And so there is a lot in the Sutta Nipata which is, is actually very profound and very beautiful and very much part of the Buddhist tradition. One reason why it is in the Khuddaka Nikaya is because the Khuddaka Nikaya kind of emphasizes verse rather than prose. So in the Khuddaka Nikaya is where you have the Dhammapada, you have the Udana, the Itivuttaka, and all of these are collections of verse. And what we're looking at now also is largely in verse. Mahamangala Sutta is a verse sutta. And there's something special about verse. Verse, prose is when it's just kind of a bit dry sometimes, a bit boring. It's just prose, it's grey, it's drab, it's uninspiring. Verse often can be inspiring. It's put together in a poetic way. It has a special kind of feeling to it. And sometimes you have to actually recite it in Pali to get that feeling, because in the Pali the verse has a certain rhythm. This is called the meter of the verse. It has a certain construction to it with a number of syllables and these kind of things. And so it has a certain appeal that prose does not have. And it can be inspirational, it can be beautiful. And this is one of the reasons why it is nice to have a look at some of these verse suttas, because of that inspirational quality. The Mahamangala Sutta is also a bit different from many other suttas because it is geared a little bit more towards lay life. And here today we have altogether, how many monastics do we have? 6 monastics? What happened to one monastic disappeared already here? He was here this morning, he's now gone. Over there, okay, I thought he had already given up. He was already had enough. After breakfast, that was kind of, wow, this is, okay, good. So I'm glad. So 6 monastics, but we have a far more lay people. So does that mean that the path of lay people and the path of monastics is different? And the answer is no, it's not really different. The path is the same, the Noble Eightfold Path, the factors are the same. But of course the challenges that you meet in lay life is going to be a little bit different from the challenges in monastic life. You have to deal with your household, you have to deal with your work, you have to deal with your children. I don't know if you have any children, but if you have, then you know what that is like. You have to deal with a spouse, you have to deal with your parents-in-law, is that right? I don't know, I always hear stories about parents-in-law. I recently had a Zoom meeting with my brother. And then my sister-in-law kind of showed up on the screen and said, I have some complaints about my mother-in-law. In other words, my mother, right? And she wanted to discuss. I thought, okay, so here we go. And so the challenges are a little bit different. And so even though the Dhamma is basically the same, the Buddha sometimes emphasizes things in a slightly different way. And this is why I thought the Mahamangala Sutta would be interesting to have a look at. Sometimes we chant the Mahamangala Sutta, and the chanting is done in, 3 minutes and 35 seconds, or something like that. I don't know if you want to how precise you want to be, but it's pretty quick. But the reality is that the content is actually quite interesting and quite profound. And what is fascinating about almost all the suttas of the Buddha is that they have a certain very clear progression to them. They start with the earliest part of the practice and they end with the most profound. They end with kind of becoming an arahant. And the Mahamangala Sutta is actually no exception. It starts out with the most simple things. The most simple things are asevana chabala nang pandita nansha sevana. So this is kind of hanging out with the superior people, the wise people, and avoiding the fools. And that is all about right view. It's about knowing the suttas. It's about knowing what is important in life, what matters. So it's all about the beginning of the path, really. The path always begins with the idea of right view, getting some information from the Buddha, seeing the world in the right way, and these kind of things. And so does the Mahamangala Sutta. And then it goes through a large number of things that are basically about ethics, the ethical aspects of the path. A little bit about meditation, not so much about meditation in the Mahamangala Sutta, but it's kind of implied there as well. And then it ends up at the very end with arahantship, the deepest insight into the nature of reality. So it has the same structure as all suttas, beginning with the basics, going all the way to the most profound. So the plan, according to Bobby, is that by the end of this retreat, everyone is supposed to be arahant. Is that I don't know if that's possible, but we that's kind of, so if we can follow the content of the Mahamangala Sutta, then in theory, the reality is usually not that exciting. But anyway, we'll see how things go as we go along here. So it has this structure just like every other sutta. And so even though you may think it is for lay people, it is still very profound. The background to this sutta, and this is a background that you can read about in the commentaries, is that they were discussing, the people at that time, the Buddhists or whoever they were discussing what are the real blessings, and they were asking each other. No one really understood what blessings meant. Actually, we have Arya Mangala here, so we have one blessing, the noble blessing. That's kind of cool. Mangala, Sumangala, there's kind of a sequence there between the people. So we have the Mangala. You're very auspicious to have a Mangala Bhikkhuni here in the as part of this. So anyway, is that why you came? Because of the connection between your name and the sutta? Or is it? Yeah? Okay, anyway. So they were discussing among each other, and they couldn't really agree. What are the real blessings in the world? What are we supposed to do to achieve real blessings? And then they went to the gods, and the gods kind of were arguing among each other, because the gods also argue. Everyone argues. Doesn't matter where you go. Argument is everywhere. It's part of existence, and no one can really decide what are the real blessings in existence. And so they said, maybe we should ask the Buddha. They should have thought about that already, right? The Buddha is still around. I mean, what kind of good fortune do you have when you get born in the time of the Buddha, and then you forget to ask the Buddha? That's kind of crazy here. And so then they decide to go to ask the Buddha, and that's how we have the Mahamangala Sutta, because they decided to ask the Buddha for what are the true blessings of existence. It's quite funny when you read the suttas, and they go to, the Buddha says some kind of enigmatic verse. Have you seen that? When the Buddha says some kind of enigmatic verse, he says something really kind of profound about papancha sanya sanka, like you have in the Madhupindaka Sutta, the Honey Bowl Sutta. And all the monks are completely bamboozled. They have no idea what the Buddha is talking about. But then the Buddha just walks off, Wait, no, don't walk. Don't understand. And so the Buddha has already gone back to his kuti. The Buddha had kutis, you know that? The Buddha would, like, if you go to India, you go to the Gandha kuti, the fragrant kuti. And in the suttas too, he would kind of just disappear, go back to his kuti. And the monks would say, "Oh, what is he talking about? I don't understand a word of what he was saying. It's just completely enigmatic and profound." So then they would go to one of the other monks and say, "Oh, please, you are also very wise, so please expound this to us." And the monk they usually would go to would be Mahakachana, because Mahakachana was kind of the expounder of short, enigmatic statements. He was famous for that. And so they go to Mahakachana, and Mahakachana would say, "Why are you asking me? Yeah, you had the heartwood, you had the core of the Dhamma, you had the most profound things. You went from the heartwood to the foliage and branches. I'm just like the foliage on the tree. The Buddha's like the heartwood. That is when you should have asked, when the Buddha was around. Yeah, now you missed your opportunity here." And the monks say, "Oh, please explain. Yeah, we don't understand anything. Yeah, what are we going to do if you don't explain?" And so they say, "Yeah, we agree that we should have asked when the heartwood was there, but because the heartwood is gone, we have to go to the foliage. So, foliage, please explain." And of course, Mahakachana, he does explain eventually, and then this is how you get some of these suttas. And so this is kind of a common theme, if you like, when they argue among each other, they can't agree, and they end up going to the Buddha to get the real deal. So this is kind of the background here for this particular sutta. So let's read out the sutta. The way I'm going to do this is to read the sutta in full to give you a feeling, a sense for how the whole thing, what it sounds like. And you know whose translation this is? Ajahn Brahmali, that's right, it's my translation. So I haven't translated many suttas, but this is one of the few suttas I have translated. I usually translate really boring stuff like the Vinaya. The Vinaya is the rules and regulations of the monastic community. And so, anyway, Bhante Sujato translated the suttas, and he said, "Yeah, you translate the Vinaya." I said, "What? You're going to have all the fun stuff. You're giving all the boring stuff to me." Okay. No, it was fine because it was more needed. Anyway, so let's have a look at this particular sutta and see what it sounds like, just to get started. So here we are, the greatest good fortune, the Mahamangala Sutta. This is in the Sutta Nipata, SNP, second chapter, Chulavagga, the lesser chapter, Sutta number 4. And this is how it goes. So this is what I have heard. At one time the Blessed One was staying near Savatthi in the Jeta Grove, Anathapindika's monastery. On that occasion, as the night was coming to an end, a certain god of great beauty approached the Blessed One while illuminating the whole Jeta Grove. After bowing to the Blessed One, that god stood to one side and spoke in verse. So this is kind of just the starting point of the sutta. Then comes, of course, the actual exchange between this god and the Buddha. And it's kind of interesting that the gods would come down, isn't it? The gods would come and ask questions. The gods weren't as smart as we sometimes think. The gods were kind of a bit deluded, a bit uncertain about the nature of things. And so they come down to the Buddha to ask questions. Why the Buddha is called the teacher of gods and humans. Because just because you are a god doesn't necessarily mean that you are wise. This is kind of one of those Buddhist outlooks. So it's kind of interesting that these gods would come and ask these kind of questions. How exactly does this happen? Because we don't see that in the present day. The gods don't come down and say, "Bobby, please help, I don't know what to say." Or, even at Bodhidharma Monastery, you don't see many devas coming and saying, "Oh, please explain the Dhamma, this doesn't happen," or anywhere else for that matter. And often what happens here, I think, is that these are like private visits. They come to your mind, and they come like a nimitta or a light in the mind. That's how they appear. And very often this is kind of how you communicate with the gods through the mental realm. So this is one of the reasons why they are luminous, so they illuminate your mind. And this is one way they would approach the Buddha, through that mental realm. Is it possible that they could come in the more physical realm as well? I think it is possible. Because anything can happen. And I think very well, even these days, there may very well be the case that there are gods around. Sometimes there are devatas around, but we interpret it in the wrong way. We interpret it as UFOs or something. Actually, it's a devata, right? Sometimes they talk about the yakas. They will come and they will do bad things to human beings, and just like sometimes the UFOs, they kind of capture human beings and take them into their spacecraft. I think that's just devatas doing some kind of funny business. That's what I reckon. At least sometimes that's what's going on. So I think there is more contact with these realms than sometimes we give credit for. Certainly, there are devas coming down and visiting monks mentally. I know that that is kind of fairly well known. And there are monks who have spoken to me and kind of said that this happens. This is not kind of unusual at all. And so that part of it, I think, is fairly clear. And the more physical appearance in reality, not so sure, but I think it is possible as well. So these things are, I think, quite certain. The gods also wanted to know the answer to these questions. So this is what the Devata says to the Buddha. Many gods and humans desiring well-being are seekers of good fortune. Please tell me the greatest good fortune. The gods and the humans have been discussing among each other. Everyone is desiring well-being. Is that why you are here? Because you desire well-being? Hopefully. You haven't come here to torture yourself or anything like that. So, desiring well-being, and you are seekers of good fortune. And the Pali word for fortune here is mangala, as I just mentioned before. So you are seekers of mangala. And the word mangala usually in Pali means like something auspicious. It means very basically the idea of good fortune. And often that is, connected with magical things, with rituals, with all kinds of stuff. You're trying to read the future by, reading the tea leaves. You should maybe ask Ajahn Brahm next time he comes if he can read the tea leaves. He's a master of tea, so maybe he's a master of reading the tea leaves as well. And there's all these various ways of kind of predicting your future. You'll be really surprised. There's a whole chapter in what is called the Brahmajala Sutta. Brahmajala Sutta, the first sutta of the Digha Nikaya, which talks about various ways of what's the right word? Prognosticating or something like that, prognostication of the future, trying to figure out what the future is going to be. Everyone wants to know the future. Everyone they go to some kind of fortune teller. Has anyone here been to fortune tellers? Probably you don't have to raise your hand, but probably some of you have been, because this is what we do as human beings. We want to know the future, and we kind of believe it a little bit, but maybe not 100%. It's a bit of fun, but also a bit exciting. So it's kind of one of those weird things. And so this is the way the world is. We want help in the world. We want a bit of magic. We want someone to look after us. Sometimes we want a God. I think one of the reasons why people believe in gods, one of the reasons why theistic religions are so large in the world is because we want a big daddy or big mummy to look after us, because life is so hard sometimes. Life can be so difficult. There's so many problems. There's so many, not just in our personal life, but in the world at large. Sometimes it becomes so despairing that you just, please, God, whoever you are, if you are there, can you hear me? I need some help. And you kind of despair because it's just so difficult sometimes. And so we are naturally moving towards magic, towards good fortune, towards auspiciousness. It's just part of human beings, because we feel small, we feel insignificant, we feel we have no power, and the world is so large and there are so many other people, so many powerful things that we would like to have someone to do something on our behalf to help us in this way. And so we are seekers of good fortune. Yeah, this is kind of what we are as human beings. But of course the Buddha, he doesn't think like that. And so when you ask the Buddha for what is the greatest good fortune, it is not magic. It is not praying to gods. Yeah. In Buddhism too, people pray to gods. Yeah, they go to Sakka, or they go to some of these kind of, all these kind of gods. Sometimes they go to the Hindu temples and pray. This is what you go to Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka is this, I don't know, I really recommend going to Sri Lanka. I love Sri Lanka. And Buddhism is so ingrained in Sri Lankan culture. But if you go to some of the temples, it's like in the one side they have the Buddha, in another corner they have all the Hindu gods. Isn't that kind of amazing? And so they pray to the Hindu gods, oh, please look after me. And then they go to the Buddha and kind of whatever, and bow down to the Buddha. And then they basically asking for good fortune. They're asking for the gods to look after them. It's also ingrained in the Buddhist culture, because there is a little bit of that in Buddhism. A little bit, but only a tiny little bit. The idea that gods can, in certain circumstances, support you. Maybe they can. Maybe in some cases they can. But that is not up to whether you go and pray at the altar. It is not because you make an offering to those gods. The gods have much better food already. That's why you want to go to heaven, because the food is much better, right? I admit it. Yeah, you like your food here in Malaysia like everywhere else. And I had, by the way, had a very nice breakfast this morning. It's one of the things I like about the kind of multicultural Malaysian style of food. So, a lot of the ways in which we want the gods to look after us doesn't work anyway. If you want the gods to look after you, guess what? You have to be a good person. You have to live well. You have to have integrity. You have to have a strict sense of morality. Then there is a chance the gods will look after you. So you have to practice the path anyway. And so the Buddha then says that if you want good fortune, the real good fortune is the practice of the Noble Eightfold Path, the practice of all the qualities of the Dhamma. That is the great fortune. And it is not because you want the gods to help you, but because that is how you build up the qualities within you. That is the greatest good fortune in the world. Because that qualities within you, that makes you independent. You no longer have to grieve so much just because things go wrong in the world, in your life, in the world outside, because you have independence within. You have resilience. You have a power. You have an ability to deal with all the things in the world. It's one of the strange things. I've been coming here to the BJF for a long time. I have no idea how long I've been coming here, but I've been coming here for many years now. And in the last few years, I've been saying, look at the world. The world is in such a terrible place. And then I come the year after, and the world is even worse. And then I come this year, it's even worse again than it was last year. It just seems to be getting worse and worse and worse. So every year I say, practice the Dhamma, because that will make you resilient. And it's more true now than it was last year. And last year it was more true than the year before, etc., etc. Yeah, the world is in a kind of strange place. I haven't been following Malaysian politics recently. I don't know what's happening here in Malaysia, but I'm sure it is not perfect here in Malaysia either. That's usually the way it is. And so the real mangala, the real blessings in the world, is your own inner qualities. That is what really matters. And this is what this sutta is about. So the Buddha, you can see, he shifts things across. He shifts things from the traditional way of thinking about blessings, which was more about external things, about the world outside, how to how to get the gods to look after you and these kind of things. And it shifts the onus onto us. It is up to us to create those blessings in our life. It is up to us to take responsibility. And initially, that sounds very harsh. I don't want to take responsibility. It's too difficult. It's natural to think like that. But actually, it is also something very positive about that. It's dangerous to rely on external things. Being responsible yourself is far more secure way of living your life. And so what this whole thing is about then, the sutta, is about how that responsibility comes about and how you take that to the highest, all the way to the highest level. So this is kind of the initial idea of the sutta. I haven't even read out the sutta yet, and the half an hour is up already. Oh well. So let us. So the idea with this retreat is to have 5 minutes break every half an hour. So there's a chance to sit quietly a little bit, just to do a little bit of meditation. Or if you want to stretch your legs, or you want to use the toilets or whatever, it's all available. And then after the 5 minutes break, then we do 10 minutes of Q&A, and then we carry on half an hour with the talk, and we carry on like that throughout the day. That's kind of the idea. So let's have a 5 minute break here.